I know I'm going to start this, and I'm not going to be able to finish.
Hey guys, welcome to Question Wings and Things. This is episode number 4, and today we've got Andrew Murphy, who is the Director of Engineering at Tubles. Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you.
How are you feeling for this?
I am terrified. I'm not very good at spice.
Yeah.
This is something which has been a demon in my side for many years. I travelled Southeast Asia and I couldn't eat a lot of the food, and I regret that missed experience.
Well, hopefully you don't regret this.
No, well, I'm hoping this is going to give me that tolerance. It's a bit like, you know, when you're trying to get over spiders.
Yeah.
One of the ways to do it is to jump in a tank of spiders.
Hopefully there's no spiders. I'm shit scared of spiders myself. So we'll dive into question 1, mate. So I'll put a dabble on here for you.
Okay, that's a small dab. I can cope with that.
Bottoms up, my man.
Cheers.
So question 1. You were a Northern English lad, just like me. Made your way over to Melbourne. Talk me through your background, how that come about, why you made the move.
If I can take a minute.
You regret this already, don't you?
Yeah. So, originally from Leeds. I grew up around that kind of area, Leeds, Bradford, if people know that. And I got into technology really super early. I was one of those annoying kids that was coding when they were going to school. So by the time I was sort of 12, 13 years old, I was writing software. Studied at school, studied at university, started doing it in a career. And I got to the point where a company I was working for in the UK, they had their head office in the UK and they had a satellite office in Melbourne.
Yeah.
And they wanted to build a software development team in Melbourne, because they basically did the sales in Australia, shipped it back to the UK, they built it in the UK, but there was lots of time zone, culture issues with that, and so they wanted a local team of software devs. So the original plan was I would fly from the UK to Melbourne, set up the office, spend 6 months, hire some devs, get everything trained up, and then fly back to the UK. That's 4.5 years ago. Those 6 months just flew by and I wanted more.
Yeah.
And so I ended up staying in Melbourne. Yeah.
How did you find that first one?
Well, it honestly, the spice isn't too bad. It's the physical hiccuping and the stuff that it triggers in you.
Right, so question number 2.
Oh, no.
There you go.
Right, let's just dribble that off the side. There we go.
There you go. Right, bottoms up.
Bottoms up. That's not too bad.
Question number 2. Obviously, you've managed teams in the UK, managed teams in Australia. Have you seen any noticeable differences in the tech scene?
That's a good question. So I'd say, and one thing I'm always aware that I'm comparing is I'm kind of comparing small city UK to large city Australia. Yep. In that sense, you know, I'm from Leeds. Leeds is a reasonably big city, but it's nothing compared to Melbourne. So there is a little bit of a disconnect there. But I would say that there's a lot more understanding in Melbourne around the extra skills you need to be a great engineer.
Yeah.
So in the UK, it's a lot focused on engineering excellence, like crafting and idealism, and you know how you build the best code. Whereas there's a lot more tempering of that with business realities and commercial realities here. And I think a lot of that comes from Australians, like being from the UK, you know that there's always 2 conversations happening when 2 UK people talk. Yeah. There's what's being said and what's not being said. And that doesn't tend to really happen with people in Australia. Like they're pretty say what they think.
Yeah.
And I think that bleeds into a lot of the business culture, which is a really nice, refreshing change for somebody from the UK.
Yeah.
So I think, it's that understanding of the wider needs of an engineer outside of their pure technical brilliance and bleeding into what is this thing actually meant to do? What are we building? Why are we building it? Who are we building it for? And how does that feed into what you build?
Yeah.
That is understood way better here than in the UK. Obviously, you know, being a new person to the country, one of the first things I did was try and find a community when I arrived. And I just started attending meetups and I started meeting people. Yeah. And, you know, that was so easy to get into. Some of the meetups I started attending when I first joined Australia, I now run and organise.
Yeah.
And that pathway for 4.5 years, I don't think would ever have happened in the UK.
This one, it takes another little step up.
Oh, okay.
So I get on the side again, so you can dribble it off a bit. We'll get this, we'll have a little bite, and I'll ask it. Yeah.
I'm trying to do a double bite,
Yeah.
so that it mixes it up and there's not as much in there, like dilutes it.
If it doesn't work, I'll try it. So question number 3, talk me through the meetups.
Yep.
And what for you makes or breaks a technical leader?
Oh, interesting, because those two things are really related. So the meetups, what I've got is the Melbourne Leadership Meetup, which is a pretty non-tech focused leadership meetup. So that's all about the skills you need to be a great leader.
Yep.
And then feeding on from that is the Melbourne CTO School, which is all about emerging leaders. It's all about people who aspire to be better leaders, either because they're just coming into leadership or because of an experienced leader who wants to take the next step in their career. And the more I'm talking, the more my tongue is starting to burn. Wow. Then the other meetup that I organise is the Web Meetup. And the idea behind that is there's a lot of discipline-focused meetups in Melbourne, which is wonderful, it's great. You know, there's the React Meetup, the Node Meetup, the Vue.js Meetup, the Angular Meetup. But the point behind the Web Meetup is to be cross-discipline. Yeah. And not just cross-discipline in terms of engineering, but cross-discipline in terms of everything you need to build a website. So we kind of alternate between engineer-based topics, UI, UX topics, soft skills topics, just to try and get cross-threading of lots of different types of skill sets. Yeah. So, you know, if I think about my teams, I think about the teams that I want to build, I want my engineers to understand UI, UX. I want my UI, UX people to understand engineering. I want my QAs to understand everything. I want everybody to have a basic understanding of every other discipline involved in the building of software. Yeah. The point of the Web Meetup is to facilitate that cross-threading of all these different things.
That was a good answer. You deserved some milk now.
Celebratory milk.
Yeah.
But that kind of feeds into the second part of your question, which is, you know, what makes a good leader? And I think a lot of that is exactly what I've just been talking about. I'm not looking for the world's best engineer. Quite frankly, that is at the bottom of my list. Like your raw technical talent is not something that I value highly. What I'm looking for is, do you understand the business you're in? Do you understand the what's and the whys and the who's behind what you're doing? And also, do you have the skills to communicate and translate that? Yeah. So communication is a big one for me. I want somebody who can explain complex technical ideas to non-technical people. I want somebody who can communicate with a client and understand what they mean and translate that to the rest of the team and understand what the team needs to get and translate that to the client. Like, they need to be that communication pipeline.
How did you find that one?
It's actually getting easier.
It's getting easier, isn't it?
It's getting easier. That first initial reaction, and now things are getting easier.
Double some of this on.
I feel like being a bit adventurous with this one.
Yeah, I've poured more on for you.
So you're being adventurous for me.
So, bottoms up.
Yeah.
You've been at Two Bulls around 6 months now?
Yeah, about that.
How have the first 6 months been, and I suppose what are the big goals you've got?
Okay, that one is worse. Yes. You got me. I joined Two Bulls remotely, which has a whole heap of challenges which we can talk about, but one big bit of that is one of the main reasons I was taken on board was to give an outside opinion and assess what we do well, what our strengths are, what our weaknesses are, what our opportunities are, and then assess how we can make things better. Doing that remotely is a big challenge because a huge part of that is building trust with the team. And how do you build trust with the team when you can't meet them in person? How do I strategically build trust with my team? And I don't mean that in a negative way. I don't mean like, you know, how do I manipulate them to trust me? Like, that's not what I mean. I mean, how do I put a focus on building trust? Because for me to do my job effectively as an engineering director, my team have to trust me. Yeah. My team have to believe that the things that I'm suggesting are in their own best interest. So a lot of the first month or two was really focused on information gathering for me and trust building with my team. They have to implicitly trust me. A friend of mine tells a story where, I tell the story because I'm terrified of it happening to me. Yeah. And I'm glad I can tell it as his story and not my story. He went to China to run a team in China. And he recognized that they were working 3 days on, 2 days off, 3 days on, 2 days off. And they were working this cycle that basically meant they could end up working extended periods of time, which was completely counter to what he was used to in Australia. So he went in there, saw this straight away and was like, perfect, you know, I've got a new team, I need to make a big win, I need to make a big impression straight away. So I'm gonna make this change and I'm gonna make it so that they're working Monday to Friday and then have their weekends off. It failed because they turned around and said, what you're expecting me to work more than 3 days in a row without a break. Because the way they viewed it was that they worked 3 days and then had a break, and then worked 3 days and then had a break, and then worked 3 days and then had a break. Whereas the way that he viewed it was they don't get more than a day off in a row.
Yeah.
And so culturally, it was just completely different. I was terrified about coming into Two Bulls and making a change that was, to me, logical, but to them counter to their culture.
Yeah.
So really, truly, what I needed to do was build an understanding of what the status quo was and why that status quo existed and what people were invested into what parts of the business. I went and got involved in projects. I got on the shop floor and I understood everything. I got involved in tons of meetings and just observed and looked and tried to build this picture of everything so that by the time I suggested a change, I really deeply, truly understood what that change meant. And I built trust enough with the team that A, they believed that I had good intentions, but B, if I was wrong, they'd tell me about it.
Go you first, actually. As we move on to question 5, it's like a punisher.
Is there a tactic between going to me first? Is it I'm so distracted by the large amount you just poured on mine that I can't see the small amount you just poured on yours?
To be fair, I think it's quite similar. Cheers, mate.
Cheers.
What's your most memorable moment in your career today, would you say?
I know I'm going to start this, and I'm not going to be able to finish. So through a series of unfortunate accidents, by the time I was 21, I was leading a team of 10 people. I phrase it as unfortunate accidents because I was not ready. Like, what 21-year-old is ready to run a team of 10 people? Promoted because I was the smartest engineer, not because I was the best leader. Wow, that is building. That is building. My boss at the time pulls me into a room and says to me, Andrew, what's your job? When your boss pulls you into a room and asks you what your job is, it's a little bit of a terrifying moment. So I'm like, okay, my job is to write software. My boss goes, that's not your job. Your job is not to write software. You're a leader of a team of software engineers. What's your job? To write really good software. No, that's not your job. That's not your job. Your job is not to write really good. I realized that I didn't know what the job of a leader was.
Yeah.
I'd been promoted into this leadership position because I was a really good engineer. But I didn't know what it meant to run a team of engineers. Yeah. It's going to be me being fired. Didn't know what I was doing. My boss knew I didn't know what I was doing. Totally within his rights to fire me. It actually turned into one of the best mentoring relationships I've ever had. Because he didn't bring me in that room to show me I didn't know what I was doing and fire me. He brought me in that room to show me I didn't know what I was doing and help me understand. And that has driven in me a need and a desire to mentor and have mentors my entire career. So that one defining moment at 21 years old shaped my entire career.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have put as much focus on leadership, mentoring and coaching without that one person bringing me into that room in that one time.
Yeah. You wouldn't get beaten hot sauce right now.
I would like to point out, I don't know if you can see this on the cameras, but look at my plate. I ate everything. Look at James's plate.
Mate, you've been a pleasure to have on, to be honest. Thanks so much for coming down.
Too.